What if the plant sagging in the corner of your kitchen window, the one you have not repotted since you moved in, is worth more than every piece of furniture in that room? Some of these neglected houseplants sell for hundreds. One of them regularly passes $1,000, and one is the most given away plant on Earth and is worth about $8. Here is what almost nobody realizes. The plants that turn out to be valuable are not the ones that were cared for. They are the ones nobody got around to fixing, because the fixing is usually what destroys the value. Nobody ever taught you that pruning, repotting, and tidying can strip a plant of everything it was worth. So before you throw anything out this month, find out what you have been ignoring. 10. The variegated rubber plant. Thick, leathery leaves in cream and green, sometimes with a pink flush running down the midrib. Ficus elastica in its variegated forms, sold as tinicae and as the pinker ruby. Yours has been in the same corner since you moved in, leaning toward the window, dropping a leaf every few months, and you long ago stopped seeing it as anything but furniture. An established variegated specimen sells in the hundreds. The plain green rubber plant sitting beside it in the shop costs $30, and they are the same species. What separates them is unstable, and the instability runs in one direction only. Variegated tissue carries less chlorophyll, so it makes less energy, so it grows more slowly. Green tissue has no such handicap. When a variegated ficus throws an all-green shoot, and eventually it will, that shoot comes up faster and stronger than everything around it and takes over the plant within a couple of seasons. Then the pale leaves start looking wrong to people. Washed out, scorched, underfed. So those get pruned away and the vigorous dark stem gets kept because it reads as the healthy one. Your test tonight. Find the 2 or 3 newest leaves on the plant and trace them back to the stem they came off. New growth arriving on a stem that is entirely dark green means that stem has reverted, and it is quietly winning. Cut it back to the point where variegation begins. The green one is what comes off, which feels backwards to everybody the first time they do it. And the loss I see constantly. Somebody tidies their rubber plant every spring for 4 or 5 years, taking out whatever looked sickly that season, and ends up with a perfectly healthy houseplant worth 1/10 of what came through the door. Number 9. The Neoregelia bromeliad. A flat rosette of stiff strap-shaped leaves, banded or marbled, packed so tightly at the base that they form a watertight cup in the middle. Somebody brought it home from a garden center. It sat there looking identical for 2 years. Then the center flushed a startling red, and the outer leaves began browning off. So the pot goes out. Nearly everyone does this, and it is the most costly habit in this entire video. Bromeliads are monocarpic. Each rosette flowers exactly once and then dies on purpose over the following year or two, and the flowering is often so small and buried so deep in the cup that nobody registers it happening. What people notice is the red center, and they read it as stress. It is the plant announcing the end. While that is going on, the replacements are already made. 3, 4, sometimes 6 pups pressed in around the base under the outer leaves, each one genetically identical to the mother. Named variegated Neoregelia are collected seriously, and established plants of the better cultivars run well into the hundreds. Nobody mass-produces them in tissue culture, so supply comes down to pups, off somebody's plant, 1 generation at a time. Your test tonight. Push the outer leaves back and run your fingers around the base of the rosette. You want firm cone-shaped shoots against the mother, and you leave them attached until each is about 1/3 her size. While you are in there, look at the cup. That central well is supposed to hold water, because the roots on these mostly grip rather than drink, and a great many bromeliads have died in houses where somebody watered the soil faithfully every week and never once filled the plant. Number 8. Streptocarpus. Most people who own one are convinced they own a failing African violet. Long quilted leaves lying almost flat in a loose rosette, softly hairy, the tips gone brown and papery. Above them, thin wiry stems carrying trumpet flowers in violet or white or pink, usually with dark veining running down into the throat. Those brown tips are what sends the plant to the bin, and they are not a fault. A Streptocarpus leaf grows outward from its base, which makes the tip the oldest tissue the plant owns, and it dies back as a matter of course. Trim it straight across with scissors if it bothers you. The leaf carries on extending from underneath. Cape primrose from South Africa, and a close cousin of the African violet. Same family, and the same remarkable habit of growing an entire new plant from a fragment of leaf. Something in the region of 1,000 named cultivars have been bred and registered across the last century. At any given moment, a handful are in commercial production. The others did not go extinct. They went onto windowsills, propagated by hand, in households where nobody ever wrote the name down. Your test tonight, and it costs you 1 leaf. Cut it crossways into segments 2 inches deep, or run the knife down either side of the central rib and throw the rib away. Push the cut edges upright into damp grit and keep it humid. Plantlets appear along the cut edge over the following couple of months, and a single leaf will give you 8 or 10 of them. And the loss. Somebody decides the plant has had its day, bins the pot in February, and a cultivar that has not been offered for sale since the 1970s goes out with the kitchen rubbish. 7. The Norfolk Island pine. Soft needles arranged in flat tiers, branches coming off the trunk in neat whorls, the whole thing shaped like a child's drawing of a Christmas tree. Bought in December with glitter sprayed on the tips and a bow stapled to the pot. This is the one I have to be straight with you about, because it is where people most often believe they have something and do not. $12. No collector market, no named cultivars anyone chases, no rare form circulating quietly among enthusiasts. They are grown by the million on plantations in Florida and Hawaii, and shipped out every autumn. And there is a harder fact nobody mentions at the till. This plant does not regenerate lower branches. When the bottom tier browns and drops from dry air or a dark corner or one forgotten fortnight, that section of trunk stays bare for the rest of its life. Growth happens at the tip and nowhere else. So the leggy one in your corner with 3 feet of naked stem below the foliage is not coming back. Not with feeding, not with a brighter window, not with anything you can do to it. It is also the only plant in this video you cannot propagate at home. Cuttings taken from a side branch root perfectly well and then grow sideways forever, never forming a trunk, because that branch only knows how to be a branch. Only the leading tip produces a proper tree, and removing it finishes the parent. Everything sold comes from seed, and the seed comes off mature trees on an island in the South Pacific, which is the whole reason it stays cheap and worth holding onto as we climb. Every plant left on this list can be multiplied by anybody with a knife and a pot of grit, and that is exactly why the good ones survived in houses rather than in nurseries. But before the top 5, something worth pulling out of the 4 items so far. Look at what actually cost people money in each one. Pruning the pale stems off a rubber plant. Binning a bromeliad that was doing precisely what bromeliads do. Throwing out a Cape primrose because its leaf tips went brown on schedule. Every one of those was somebody taking care of their plant. The neglected plant and the valuable plant keep turning out to be the same plant, and not by coincidence. Attention gets spent on making a plant look right, and looking right is rarely what these things are priced on. A plant nobody has intervened with for 20 years has simply been left to accumulate the only thing that cannot be bought. 6. The heirloom amaryllis. It arrives in a box in November. Fat brown bulb, a bag of compost, a picture of enormous red trumpets on the front. It flowers gloriously in January, produces a few floppy leaves afterward, and by March somebody has decided the show is over and the pot goes out. Hippiestrum, properly, and not amaryllis at all, though nobody is going to win that argument at this point. That bulb will live 50 years and longer. Every season it lays down another layer and gains diameter, and flower count runs directly off bulb size. A bulb the width of a grapefruit throws 2 stalks with 4 trumpets on each, where a supermarket bulb manages 1 stalk. Named cultivars from before the war survive in households, and essentially nowhere in commerce. Your test tonight. Put a tape measure around the widest part of the bulb, then feel around the base plate for offsets, which come away with a twist once they have their own roots. And the mistake that keeps everyone's bulbs small. Those floppy leaves after flowering are the entire manufacturing season for next year's blooms. Cut them off to tidy the pot, and you have canceled it. Number 5. The angel wing begonia. Bamboo-like canes with swollen joints and leaves shaped exactly like a wing. 1 lobe long, 1 short, hanging asymmetrically off the stem. Usually dark olive with a scatter of silver spots across the surface, deep red underneath. In a good year, it drops clusters of pink or coral flowers on thin stems. The one in your window came from somebody. These almost never arrive from a shop. Somebody snapped off a cane, stood it in a jam jar on a windowsill until it rooted, and handed it over in a yogurt pot with no label. American breeders spent the middle of the last century on these. Hundreds of named cane begonias were bred, registered, and sold through specialist catalogs, and the spotting pattern was the whole point of the selection work. Spot size, spot density, how much silver, whether the leaf edge was cut or plain. Perhaps a dozen are commercially available today. The rest moved into houses. Your test tonight. Photograph 1 mature leaf flat against white paper, top and underside, then photograph the whole plant. Silver spotting varies enormously between cultivars, and it is what identification runs on. The American Begonia Society keeps registers, and their species and cultivar people will look at photographs. The mistake almost everyone makes is pruning. Cane begonias flower on new growth and go bare and gangly at the bottom if left alone, so people trim the tips to bush them out, which is the one thing that removes the flowering wood. Cut a cane hard, right back to a joint low on the plant, and it sends up a fresh cane from the base. And the loss on this one is quiet. The person who gave it to you knew what it was called. Whether anyone asked them is a different question. Number 4. The windowsill geranium. Woody and bare for 8 inches up the stem, 3 or 4 leaves clustered at the top, sitting in the same pot on the same sill since before the kitchen was redone. Every October somebody says it should go. Every May it flowers anyway. Pelargonium, properly. That argument was lost around 1800 and is not coming back. The 19th century went genuinely mad for these. Breeders across France and England produced thousands of named cultivars, and one English nursery, J. H. Cannell and Sons, listed hundreds of them in its 1910 catalog alone. All but a handful are now lost to the trade. 2 wars did most of the damage. Glasshouses turned over to food, and the men who kept the collections went into the army. What survived did so on windowsills, because this plant roots from a cutting pushed into damp grit by absolutely anybody. That is how a cultivar outlives the nursery that bred it. Concern is sharpest around the regals, the Martha Washingtons, with ruffled azalea-like flowers and dark blotches on the upper petals. One specialist nursery describes itself as thoroughly alarmed at how many old selections have disappeared, and the International Regal Preservation Project in San Diego exists to find what remains. They will identify a plant from photographs and ask for cuttings only if the photographs fall short. Your test tonight takes 2 minutes. Crush a leaf first. Scented leaf types run to rose, lemon, peppermint, nutmeg, apple, and coconut, and a strong distinctive smell narrows the field immediately. Then photograph the whole plant, 1 leaf laid flat, and 1 open flower head. 3. Aglaonema, the waiting room plant. broad pointed leaves, dark green with silver-gray brushwork along the veins, standing in a corner of every dentist's office in the country since about 1975. Chinese evergreen, and you stopped seeing it decades ago. Thai growers did not stop seeing it. From the 1990s onward, they bred this genus hard for color, producing named hybrids in pink, red, and coral that look almost nothing like the office plant, and at the height of that boom, single specimens of a new named cultivar changed hands for sums that would buy a used car. Your test. Look for pink or red in the midrib and petiole, rather than only silver on the blade. And the loss on this one is specific to windowsills. A glionema will not take cold. Leave one pressed against the glass through a hard frost, and the leaves go greasy and translucent overnight, and that damage does not grow out. Number 2. Anthurium warocquianum. Strap-shaped leaves hanging down rather than standing up, dark enough to read as near black in a dim room, with a surface like crushed velvet and pale crystalline veins branching across it. The Queen Anthurium, named for a Belgian industrialist who collected them, and it comes off the cloud forests of Colombia at 4,000 feet and up. Small plants sell around $150. Mature ones pass $1,000. What separates those two numbers is nothing but elapsed time. A warocquianum puts out one leaf every 6 to 8 weeks at best, and each leaf arrives slightly larger than the one before, so the plant builds size in single increments across years. Mature foliage reaches 3 or 4 feet long and 15 inches across. There is no way to hurry it and no way to buy the interval, which makes the standard act of tidying genuinely expensive here. Emerging leaves on this species bruise if you so much as brush them, and a bruised leaf marks permanently. People cut the damaged ones off. Remove a 3-foot leaf, and you have removed 2 months of production and a measurable share of the plant's photosynthetic capacity, and the next leaf comes in smaller because there is less engine behind it. Your test tonight is a tape measure. Lay the longest leaf flat and read the length, because that number is the plant's age written down. 1. And it is almost certainly hanging in a macrame holder in your house right now, or your mother's, or somebody gave you one, and you have since given away 4. The spider plant. Arching green and cream straps, and those long wiry stems carrying miniature versions of itself dangling in the air. Chlorophytum comosum. It grows in offices, in bathrooms, in university corridors under fluorescent tubes, and it has been doing so for 50 years. An ordinary one is worth about $8, and I am not going to dress that up. There is no collector market. There is no rare form quietly changing hands. It is possibly the most propagated houseplant on the planet, which is exactly why nobody pays for it. Fame is not value. The thing everyone recognizes is almost never the thing worth the most, because the whole world already has one. But consider what that plant actually taught you. Every single item tonight came down to the same skill, and this is the plant that handed it to most people in this country. A section of Streptocarpus leaf in damp grit. A begonia cane in a jam jar. A bromeliad pup twisted off the mother. An amaryllis offset. Somebody snipped a plantlet off a spider plant when you were 9 years old, put it in a glass of water, and it rooted. And that is where you learned that plants can be made rather than bought. So the final test is the same one running under all 10. Do not ask what the plant is worth today. Ask how long it has been standing there, and whether anyone alive still knows what it is called. Because a species is what a shop sold somebody. A cultivar is what a person handed over a fence. And the years in between are the only part nobody can sell you at any price. Everything valuable tonight was leggy, overgrown, browning at the edges, and one tidy afternoon away from being ruined. If this made you want to look properly at your own windowsills, do me one small thing and like the video. It tells me to keep making these. And if you are not subscribed, that is where the next one lives. Then tell me down in the comments. Which plant in your house came from another person, and who were they? I read every single one. Last thing, and I mean it. Before you prune, repot, or throw out anything this month, photograph it first. Number 2 is measured in years, and you cannot put those back.